Something big is coming that no one is talking about. March 2022 is the time to get prepared. Hi, I'm Saratoga Ocean, and I work together with an interdimensional, interuniversal, and extraterrestrial force known as Telstar, along with Archangel Michael. If you think you've seen everything the controllers are preparing to unleash on us, there's something else down the road that no one is talking about. We need to prepare ourselves now so we're not caught by surprise. And the energy of March 2022 is the perfect time to do this. Right now, everyone is focused on the new war between Russia and Ukraine. And I'm pretty sure that China and Taiwan could be next. See, the weird thing is that we're not used to other major countries starting wars. And that's because for the past 70 or 80 years or so, it's been the domain of the USA to start all the wars. So when another major country starts a war, we are just shocked. I mean, this is just terrible. Now, I think that what's really going on is that various factions of the controllers are trying to claim their territory before something bigger goes down. And I'll talk more about this in just a couple of minutes. But it's a really volatile situation right now. Now, in the meantime, behind the scenes, a much larger plot is taking place. Have you all ever heard of this guy? I don't know if I'm even allowed to say his name. So let's just call him KS. Or we could call him Mr. Dinosaur because he has a distinctly reptilian flair about him. Anyway, this guy literally thinks he owns the planet. He is like the personification of a movie villain. I mean, how weird is that? Now, a few days ago, I happened across a brief video of this guy talking. He was talking about the lockdowns and all of the virus measures that we have all endured for the past 2 years. He said that everyone wants things to return to normal like the way it was before. But then he said, that is fiction. It will not happen. He said because the next crisis is waiting for us right around the corner. And that crisis, he said, is climate change. This guy was literally revealing the controller's script because he is one of the main controllers on this planet. Now, way back before the words climate change became embedded in our consciousness, it was called the environmental movement. And that started at least a couple of decades ago, and actually it was probably even longer than that. And back in those days, environmentalism seemed pretty benign. But here's something very interesting. One day, some years ago, during a live event that we were doing, Archangel Michael said, at some point in the future, the environmental movement is going to morph into the biggest, most dangerous and repressive religion the world has ever seen. Now, at the time, I had no idea what he was talking about, but now I do. Like so many other things that Archangel Michael and Telstar predicted years ago, this is another one that is now becoming a reality. So back to Mr. KS, the dinosaur man. What he said in those couple of sentences is all you need to know. And now I'll explain to you what that means. Right now, it kind of looks like humanity is winning against the controllers because the whole virus health narrative is pretty much falling apart. And they seem to be letting go very suddenly of a lot of their mandates. That's a good thing, of course, even though I'm always a little suspicious when they do things like that so out of the blue and so suddenly. But anyway, it's a good thing as long as we don't go back to sleep. See, it's important to understand that the past 2 years have not been just some weird, isolated event. These 2 years have only been a part of a much larger plan. Now, it could be argued about whether or not the past 2 years were either a success for the controllers or a failure. We could say, hey, they failed because now we're onto them and they are having to withdraw their mandates. Yet, the controllers could also say, wow, this succeeded beyond our wildest imagination. We never dreamed that people would be so quick to respond like sheep and let us get away with this for as long as they did. They could say that because they know that this was just a smaller part of their much larger plan. See, our mistake was thinking that they just had this weird fetish for locking us down, and that was all there was to it. But their actual goal was to put all of their systems in place that they would need for their much larger plan, and in the process get us to accept those systems as reality. And the best way to accomplish that was with a big, scary health issue. I kind of suspect that they knew all along that this initial phase would only be temporary. They just needed for it to go on long enough for them to get their basic systems of control in place. Now let me pause for a moment and point out something about how we fail as humans in this planetary war so we can correct that failing and start thinking more intelligently. See, we humans are far too reactive. We don't tend to think strategically in this situation. The controllers do something to us and we react. Then they do something else and we react again. This is why our only answer seems to be protesting. Protesting is a reaction to something after the fact. Now, I'm not saying that protesting is bad, but if that's all you have, it may not be enough. See, the controllers think strategically and proactively. They operate at physical and metaphysical levels. We humans, on the other hand, tend to function only at the physical level from our lower reactive reptilian brains. This is the part of our brain that is perfectly tuned to the vibration of fear and anger. This puts us at a distinct disadvantage because we can be easily herded and manipulated just like animals. We collectively tend to go through our days unconsciously, waiting for the next thing to happen that signals us to react again. The only way to correct this failing is to evolve your consciousness. And that's something that must be done at the individual level before it can manifest at a larger collective level. We are here as starseeds and light workers to expand our consciousness and our intelligence to much higher levels, and then hold that space energetically for newly awakening humans. That's so the newly awakened can more easily move into that space themselves if they choose to do so. So we don't want to get distracted and lose sight of our larger purpose here. Now let's talk about the next big thing that the controllers have in store that Mr. Dinosaur so kindly informed us of. He knew he could say it out loud because he also knew that we were likely to be focused on reacting to the current news and propaganda and would therefore give it no attention whatsoever. What the controllers need next is a more permanent emergency. They need a crisis that no one can argue with. They need it as an excuse to lock us down in a digital dystopia where they can control us forever. And that emergency is going to be labeled climate change. Now, these guys have been telling us for years that they are experts on the planet's climate when they can't even predict the weather accurately. They can't predict earthquakes and volcanoes. They can't predict tornadoes. But we are supposed to believe that they are infallible experts about this planet's massive trajectory of climate changes, which span thousands and even millions of years. Now, this would also mean that they have total knowledge about the sun and everything it's going to do from moment to moment. I mean, These guys are absolute geniuses. I mean, who knew? Anyway, they are going to tell us that we humans are the reason that the planet's climate is changing. They are going to say that we are destroying the planet by our very existence. Notice that they will not be including themselves in that problem. How interesting is that? It's all going to be about carbon and CO2. Now, there is a deeper hidden bit of programming behind all of this. They are obsessed with negative programming about carbon and CO2 because we are carbon-based life forms who just happen to exhale CO2. What an amazing coincidence! Their ultimate aim is to detach us from our biological selves and turn us into an AI version of life. So they have to get us to reject ourselves as carbon-based creatures. Now, I want to share something again with all of you that I mentioned in an earlier video. It was either Adam or John in Telstar, those are two of the beings that I channel, who said this in an earlier message. They said that if you agree that by your mere existence alone as a biological human, if you agree that that means that your existence is destroying this planet, then you're giving the controllers permission to kill you. Now, none of this is really about the climate. It's really about transhumanism and shifting us into an AI universe. Now, the human controllers who mysteriously will be exempt from this tragedy think that they are going to inherit this beautiful planet for themselves by getting all of us off of it. I suspect that might be the deal they've been offered by the higher ups in the controllers' hierarchy. However, I seriously doubt that that's really going to be the case. Okay, now let's get back to the war between Russia and Ukraine. You can view this war from a reactionary mindset of shock and surprise, or you can view it in a larger context of understanding the controller's endgame and how this might fit into it. Overall, I think they are focused on total AI control of our lives using climate change as the excuse. They have spent the past 2 years putting the foundational systems in place for that, using this scary health issue to get us to go along with them. But they also have another goal, which is to control the entire planet from a single source of governance. And this does not work out very well when you have different countries with different agendas. Now, it's quite possible that they might be wanting to use war as a means to change all of that. Because unfortunately, this is the method that humans have used for thousands of years to rearrange territory and governance. So if they want to rearrange the planet from being a system of individual entities of governance, which is extremely problematic for them, they might feel that they have to use war to end all of that and create a single planetary government, which is why this could possibly morph into a world war. In a way, it's almost like a proxy war between Russia and NATO, which is comprised of 30 different countries. And Russia and China are already kind of like buddies, so you can see where this could go if China decides to enter the fray with Taiwan. Things could get really crazy. So here's what we need to understand so we can stay very grounded. The chaos on this planet is not likely to end until the controllers have either reached their ultimate goal of total AI control or somehow give up because the environment doesn't make that possible. As of 2020, the controllers have launched their plan, and their intention is to follow through until they reach the endgame, which will eventually manifest as the singularity. The singularity is the point at which AI intelligence exceeds our human capacity to understand or control it. It means it basically takes on a life of its own and behaves in a way that is far more advanced than anything humans can comprehend. Now, as I said, the controllers think strategically and metaphysically. In that way, they are way ahead of us because we humans tend to be so reactive and so easily distracted. And this is what we need to change. I suggest that we not wait around to see where this war is going. Instead, I think it would be wise to understand that we need to raise our level of consciousness at least to a level that matches the range at which the controllers are operating. Now, March is only the beginning of this new situation. So strangely enough, we have a little bit of breathing room to get ourselves together. And I really think the energy of March is great to support us in this right now. But we have to approach this as individuals because the collective is obviously comprised of individuals. Individuals make up the collective. So each one of us is like a cell in the larger body of the human collective. And we want to have as many strong, healthy, fully functioning cells as possible. So if you understand this analogy, you will see that everyone matters. No one is insignificant. So I suggest that we reset our consciousness, starting with understanding the bigger picture and the controller's motives. They have set up specific steps and specific layers to unfold in a certain order until they reach their destination of transhumanism and total AI control. So let's review quickly what we know about these steps so far. Step 1 was to catch us all by surprise when everything was calm at the end of 2019 by introducing a very scary health issue. They needed to do this in order to justify them setting up their foundational systems of control and to get us all collectively programmed to go along with it. Now, step 2 could be to create maximum chaos using war in order to produce more confusion, trauma, and distraction so that we never really recover from step number 1. And it might prove to have a larger purpose of restructuring territory and planetary governance. Now, step 3 is likely to be a new excuse to re-implement and advance the already in place systems of AI control in a way that is more permanent. Now, there are several possible interim excuses for this in advance of the final climate change excuse. All of these steps are designed to lead to their final goal of shifting what remains of humanity into the metaverse, with the ultimate destination being a total move into an AI artificial universe of so-called reality. And once that happens, natural human evolution will come to an end, and the journey after that is unknown. Now, this probably all sounds pretty terrible, and it really is. But we need to know this in order to understand our higher role in this scenario. If we just stay in fear and confusion and make up stories that only serve to make us feel better, then we don't have much of a chance, because in that case, we are not in the mode of being metaphysically strategic or of planning anything. And we are so much more intelligent than that. So that's why I say now is the time to expand our consciousness and elevate our natural intelligence as creators. We want to engage the power of our intention, at the very least at the same level that the controllers have engaged their power of intention. So here's a question that we want to ask ourselves. How much have our minds and our outlook been shaped by the daily doses of propaganda and mind control that we are fed via the internet? I think it's wise to take much of that with a grain of salt. Instead of taking what they say literally and reacting to it, we could ask ourselves, why are they saying this right now? How does this fit into their plan? That gives us a much higher and broader perspective and makes it almost impossible for them to manipulate us emotionally. I would also ask another question. If you suddenly see online mobs of people saying the exact same thing with the exact same perspective, even if those mobs appear to be peaceful and benign, you might want to consider that what you are witnessing is the result of mass mind control, where people are thinking in groups instead of critically thinking like individuals who want to exchange intelligent ideas. Again, you can ask yourself, why is this happening? Why would this level of groupthink be encouraged and cultivated? How might this fit in with the controller's master plan? Just by asking these simple questions, you instantly elevate your consciousness and your intelligence to a higher level. You are positioning yourself to begin thinking strategically instead of being emotionally reactive. And this can have quite a calming effect because you're not being drawn in and manipulated. And when you sense that you are no longer able to be manipulated by the media or by the crowds that they manipulate, you begin to feel empowered. You start to feel metaphysically much more confident. I think that this is probably a good first step to feeling a lot more grounded. This will clear your mind so you can access your higher intelligence. Now, we can expect the media in the month of March to continue feeding us all kinds of war propaganda to draw us in and make us feel horrible, angry, and more traumatized. You know, there is terrible, unimaginable suffering happening all over this planet. Why do they pick the specific things they do to draw in our focus? Why this war and why now? See, these people are master manipulators who cannot be trusted. So I encourage you to begin by thinking for yourself and look much more deeply into the why of what they say. This is how we lift the veil of mind control and propaganda from our eyes. The controllers have enslaved us by controlling our minds and how we think. They control us by corralling us into opposing groups who are told what to think. And then they make sure that each group's thinking is at odds with the others. Then they proceed to demonize the group that they want attacked. Now, the groups are generally labeled as mainstream and alternative. Both sides believe that they are 100% right and that the other side is 100% wrong. And then the controllers manipulate each group accordingly. See, ultimately, they don't want anyone thinking as an individual, because if that happens, they lose control. So if you want to stop unconsciously doing anything to support the controller's agenda, then start by thinking for yourself. Don't be afraid to see yourself as an individual. That's exactly the fear they want you to have. They want you to believe that if you think for yourself, then you will be isolated and alone. Do you see how stupidly simple this really is? The only ones who lose when people think for themselves are the controllers, because then they lose control of your mind and your consciousness. And that's the secret they do not want you to know. So in the month of March, I suggest that we extract ourselves from the propaganda and question everything. Get firmly situated in your own consciousness. Stay centered and grounded and fully present within your own sense of love and life and intelligence. And as always, stay on that higher timeline by improving your life and your experience in ways that are meaningful to you. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it out with anyone else who you feel could use some relief from the stress of being manipulated by these crazy controllers. And be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, because I am here every Tuesday with all new videos. And with that, I'm sending you loads of love, light, and high vibrational energy. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Namaste.